Here's why I stopped going to parties. When I was about 14, I felt like I'd been left out. Nobody invited me to their house parties. I felt like I didn't matter, and I would have done anything to be invited. It's only natural, I guess. I saw other people having fun, and heard people talk about these things all the time, telling each other how they'd had the time of their life. I felt as though I was missing out on something. Not long after this, I eventually became worthy enough to receive invitations. Now, I went to quite a few parties around the age of 15 and 16, but I want to tell you about this one in particular. It was a big party, with probably around 200 people there. I had no idea it was going to be this big. The house was full to the brim. I saw people I knew from Instagram and I was like, oh wow, you exist? And I thought it was pretty cool. But that lasted about 5 minutes, and soon my perception began to change. I looked around and saw all these people talking, laughing, partying, and doing everything else that comes with it. Perhaps it was down to them being drunk and me being sober, or maybe it was the fact that I was the only brown guy as usual. I just didn't fit in. I would walk around from room to room, see people happy, see people crying. It made no sense to me. I still danced, I still smiled, and I tried to have a good time. But I couldn't. It was such a strange feeling to know everyone else seems like they're having fun, but you aren't. I distinctly remember this moment, sitting on the sofa, observing the chaos happening around me. Is this what fun is supposed to look like? A girl was throwing up to my left, a random dude and girl who'd just met each other, with their tongues down each other's necks. The smoke from cigarettes and the disgusting smell of alcohol lingered in the room. This was when I first had this surreal feeling of
feeling completely separate from anyone else, almost like I was in my own
dimension. Despite being surrounded by people, I felt lonely and lost. I remember saying to myself that I would never go to a party ever again, and that anything was better than this. Now, don't get me wrong, most of the people I met that day were perfectly normal, but I didn't want to be there, so it didn't matter whether I was with my closest friends or total strangers. After this point, I've had a peculiar relationship with large social events like this. To begin with, I still went to parties. I danced with my friends, but eventually I became less fond of the music. I liked meeting new people, but soon started to loathe the meaningless interactions with people I would never see again. There were so many things that just irritated me. It came to a point where I wasn't making any good memories and I wasn't having fun. And at that point, I stopped going. But there was still a part of me that wanted to be there, just so that I didn't miss out. You've probably felt pulled towards some sort of activity or experience, despite knowing you don't actually want to do it. And this is because you think you'll miss something. Often, you'll go to crazy lengths to participating in it, when deep down you know that you don't really want to be there. This is called the fear of missing out, or FOMO for short. It describes a social anxiety created by an individual with the belief that others might be having fun while oneself is not present. And for me, this continued despite me knowing that I disliked going to any of these events. How stupid is that? Even though I knew I didn't want to be there, I still felt as though I was missing out on something. Don't trick yourself into thinking you're having fun simply because other people enjoy doing that same activity that you dislike. Once I'd been to a few parties and the novelty wore off, I knew they weren't for me. Imagine you're watching TV and a show like Friends comes on. I, quite frankly, hold the opinion that Friends is an utter piece of garbage, so I would look for something else to watch. Just because other people enjoy wasting their time watching Friends, that doesn't mean that I have to fool myself into thinking I like Friends too. So when I walk out the room or change the channel, there's nothing for me to miss. Yeah, look, maybe it's just me. Perhaps if I intoxicated myself like everybody else, I would have had a completely different experience. But I didn't want to do that, and I still don't want to do that. Hence why I've never touched any type of drug or cigarette or anything else for that matter. The chances are I will probably end up going against my own advice and recommendations. But at that point, I'll have to come back to this video and remember how wise my former self was. And realize how stupid I've become.